All right, guys, what's up? It's Matt Wenning at WenningStrength.com, and today we're going to talk about what I consider the greatest physiques of all time. Now, everybody has their own list of who they think the best is. Mine is mostly based on the fact of mass, symmetry, in all different types of areas, and not only that, how much they actually changed or affected the sport of bodybuilding or strength sports in general. That has to be mentioned as well. The number one physique of all time, and had probably the biggest impact on strength training, people wanting to get in shape, and changing gym culture from people that are kind of taboo and almost circus clowns to mainstream, is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger took basically a backdoor sport like powerlifting, which was bodybuilding at the time, and turned it into mainstream popularity. That's huge. Okay, so in the 70s, when Arnold was dominating bodybuilding and won 7 Olympias, he had a physique that was just absolutely out of control. You talk about from waist to shoulder ratio to arm size and all those different things. His body symmetry was so hard to beat, and a lot of it came from his waist sizes. For his muscle mass density, his waist was just super small. He had the perfect mixture of everything. The only thing I would count him down on body parts is upper leg. He just didn't have the quad of a lot of the guys like, that came before him or after him, like Tom Platz, right? Tom Platz probably has the best legs ever in bodybuilding. But the point is that Arnold made an impact on the field that will probably never be done again, based on the fact that he drew strength training out of the dungeons and into public eye. The next one that I think has to be mentioned is, again, and nobody's going to refute this in their top 5, is Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman is one of those genetic freak, psycho beefcakes that you're just never going to see probably another body like that again. He was so freaking big and so strong and had so much muscle tissue beyond what the people had in that particular time. It just is baffling. He would come into stage cut at around 290. I mean, you're thinking about that. He's probably sitting around 5 to 6% body fat at 290. I mean, that's unbelievable. And the amount of domination that he had in those 2000s years. Now, the problem with Ronnie Coleman is that he already had injuries coming into bodybuilding. He had gotten back injuries from other sports, and his smaller waist and really, really insanely strong lower back made him a prime target for back injuries. When you're a bodybuilder and you're getting super lean and dried out and you're still squatting 800 and deadlifting 800, that's awesome, but at the end of the day, probably caused quite a bit of mileage. If I were to talk to Ronnie Coleman and would have been his strength coach at his prime, I probably would have trained him like he wanted to train until he was about 36, 37, and then I would have pulled him into isolated training and got it off of his spine and started switching everything over from, again, mileage. Right? If you want to look at the main reason why we train the way we train is so that we don't get the mileage that Ronnie Coleman had. Ronnie Coleman used a lot of the same exercises a lot over and over and over again, and now he's beat up beyond belief. But just remember, he's close to 60 years old as well. The next guy that I would say has to be listed at the top would be one of the best bodybuilders that never won an Olympia, and that's going to be Flex Wheeler. Flex Wheeler, as far as symmetry is concerned, was probably the best bodybuilder ever. But the problem with Flex Wheeler was the fact that he came in the mass era. So right when Dorian and Ronnie and all those guys were going fucking huge, you had Flex Wheeler sitting at about 210, 215. Now, that's a big dude for as lean as he was, but compared to those guys, it was hard to beat him based on symmetry. And really, bodybuilding hasn't looked at symmetry as its top priority since Frank Zane. So my point is that if you really wanted the symmetry, the frame size with the muscle bellies, you really can't refute Flex Wheeler. And a lot of how I designed winning warm-ups, a lot of how I designed some of my training is based off of Flex Wheeler's templates on higher volume and lower weight. I had a very interesting talk with Flex one time, and you can go back on my YouTube videos with our podcast. But Flex Wheeler said that he had gotten his squat up to, I say, 550, 600 pounds for like a couple of reps, and he said it never made him as big as doing 300 for sets of 20. Now, obviously that's a ton more volume, but what Flex figured out is that volume is king. And why do we do Wenning warm-ups for 4 sets of 25? Because volume is king, okay? Builds more muscle, builds more ligaments, more tendons, and more physical work capacity. A lot of that I hybrided off of Flex Wheeler's mentality. The next guy that I would say is probably needs to be on the list that nobody talks about now is Steve Reeves. Steve Reeves, if I remember correctly, is one of the first Olympias, but he's also the first guy to transition from bodybuilding into movies. He was one of the first Hercules on a Hollywood stage. He was jacked beyond belief at that particular time and very lean and also very healthy. I want to say that Steve Reeves lived way into his 90s and he still looked really, really in shape even into his 80s. The point is that Steve Reeves broke barriers and started to get people to really think about physical fitness. If we go back farther than Steve Reeves, which is pre-1940, really strength training was circus act stuff. You had Louis Sire, you had all these other guys. I'd have to think about it for a second, but you have so many dudes that back then it was all about feats of strength. It really wasn't about looks per se. So my point is that these are 4 guys that I think were the best physiques of all time, and a lot of that was rated on what they did and how they changed a lot of things. I feel bad. I think Flex Wheeler should have won at least 1, maybe 2 Olympias. And I feel bad for Ronnie because I think if he'd have been training around smarter people, he probably would have been able to at least subside some of the issues that he's having now. But at the end of the day, you can't really refute performance, and he doesn't seem too unhappy with what he gave up to be able to do the things that he did. So lay your list down below this on the comments. Let me know who you think is the best and why. Because at the end of the day, everybody has their own different list of who they maybe know or who they think is the best or who they grew up idolizing. This is my particular list. I think these guys deserve a lot of credit, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you can, go visit winningstrength.com. Check out our hypertrophy manual, which is kind of based more on bodybuilding, and our power building manual, which is based a lot on how Ronnie Coleman used to train. Talk to you guys later.